You are probably wasting your money on high-power handheld radios because that 10-watt label on the box is almost always a lie in the real world. Most people think that more watts automatically means you can talk further across the mountains or down the highway. Today, we are stripping away the marketing hype to see how a budget 10-watt handheld actually performs against a classic car-mounted setup. We are going to find out if these cheap multi-mode handsets are a revolution for CB radio or just a fancy way to drain your batteries. If you have ever looked at a radio online and wondered why one costs $50 and the other costs $200, this is for you. Let us start with the basics of what we are actually testing here on the 27 MHz band. Traditional CB radios in cars are usually limited to 4 watts of power because that is what the law allows in many places. Then you see these new handhelds coming from budget brands claiming they can push 10 watts or even more on FM or AM. On paper, that sounds like a massive upgrade that should double your range and make your voice crystal clear from miles away. But radio waves do not really care about what is printed on a glossy cardboard box or a cheap sticker. The first thing you notice when you hold one of these 10-watt budget handsets is that they feel pretty solid and look professional. They usually have a big screen and lots of buttons for switching between different modes like AM and FM, which is great. But the moment you press that push to talk button, you are fighting a massive battle against the laws of physics. See, the frequency used by CB radio has a very long wavelength of about 11 meters, which is roughly 36 feet long. To send that signal out effectively, you really need an antenna that is at least a decent fraction of that total length. The little rubber antenna that comes on your handheld is only about 8 or 9 inches long, which is a huge problem. Imagine trying to throw a giant beach ball through a tiny little straw, and you will understand why this setup struggles. Even if the radio is pumping out 10 watts of raw power, most of that energy never actually leaves the small antenna. It gets turned into heat or just bounces back into the radio, which can actually damage the electronics over time. Compare that to a traditional vehicle setup where you have a big steel whip antenna mounted on the roof of a truck. That car antenna is often 5 feet tall or even longer, and it uses the metal body of the vehicle as a ground plane. This creates a massive launching pad for your signal that a handheld device simply cannot replicate no matter the power. I took these two setups out to a flat stretch of road to see where the signal finally started to break up. I started at just 1 mile away, and the 10-watt handheld was already sounding a bit fuzzy on the standard antenna. The person on the other end said my voice was thin, and there was a lot of background static covering my words. Meanwhile, the 4-watt car radio was coming in loud and clear, like I was standing right next to the receiver. It is a bit of a shock to see a radio with less power performing twice as well just because of the antenna. This is the big secret that radio companies do not want you to focus on when you are shopping for new gear. Power is important, but the antenna is the boss of the system, and it decides who gets to hear you and who does not. Then there is the issue of the battery life, which is something these budget high-power radios struggle with constantly. Pumping out 10 watts of power takes a lot of juice from those small lithium batteries inside the handheld unit. If you talk a lot, you might find your radio dying in just a couple of hours, which is not great for a long trip. Car radios are wired directly into the vehicle battery so they can transmit all day long without ever losing any strength. I also noticed that these budget radios tend to get very warm in your hand when you are using the high power mode. Heat is the enemy of electronics, and it usually means the radio is not being very efficient with the energy it has. Another challenge with these budget handsets is the receiver quality, which is often overlooked by most beginners. It does not matter if you can shout 10 miles away if your radio is too deaf to hear the person shouting back. The cheap components in some of these units struggle to filter out noise from power lines or other electronics. When I was near a busy intersection, the handheld was buzzing like a beehive, making it almost impossible to hear anything. The vehicle-mounted radio had much better filters and could pick out voices from the noise without any real trouble. We decided to try a little experiment to see if we could save the handheld by giving it a better fighting chance. We took a special adapter and plugged the 10-watt handheld directly into the big antenna on the roof of the truck. Suddenly, the world opened up and we were hitting stations that were 5 or even 7 miles away with ease. This proves that the radio itself has the guts to do the work, but it is being held back by its own portable design. If you buy one of these, you are basically paying for a high-power engine that is being fed through a tiny fuel line. It works fine for short distances, but it will never replace a real base station or a permanent vehicle install. The FM mode on these new radios is a nice touch, though, because it sounds much clearer than the old AM standard. If you and a friend both have these handsets and you are within a mile of each other, the audio is perfect. It sounds almost like a cell phone call, which is a huge step up from the scratchy noise we grew up with on CB. But as soon as you put a hill or a few thick buildings between you, that FM signal disappears much faster than AM. AM signals tend to degrade gracefully, while FM signals just drop off a cliff and leave you with total silence. So, who is this 10-watt budget handheld actually for if it cannot beat a standard car radio in a fair fight? It is perfect for people who need to be mobile, like spotters on a trail or people working around a large campsite. It is also a great emergency backup to keep in your glove box just in case your main radio or phone fails. But if you are expecting to talk across the county while sitting on your porch, you are going to be disappointed. You would be much better off spending your money on a better antenna than on more watts of transmit power. The reality of handheld CB performance is that portability always comes with a massive sacrifice in total range. 10 watts sounds like a lot, but in the world of 27 megahertz, it is just a small drop in a very big bucket. True performance comes from height and hardware, not from a number printed on a box by a marketing team. Check out my other video on how to tune your antenna to get the most distance out of any radio you own.